welcome to the Club of Heroes.
It's that
What
time.
is it? Review night?
Yeah, review night.
With your host, Chris Bearden, and your co-host,
Evan Arnold.
So, you brought over a stack of books this evening from your recent voyage to Austin.
It's true. I went to Austin Books and Comics. That's right. You know, this is like a mecca for people in Texas. I mean, it's got a giant statue of the Hulk. What more could you want? And probably the largest selection of comics I've seen thus far in person. Just it's outstanding how much material they have, and everyone there is really friendly, really willing to help you. I really like that place a lot.
Wow. So what'd you get? What are we going to talk about?
Okay. The first book I picked up from there was S.H.I.E.L.D. It's a New York Times bestseller, and I haven't heard of either of these, this author or this writer so far, but I was really impressed with what I'd read. It's a really quick read. It's enjoyable all the way through. It's hard to pin it down as a single genre. I mean, he's obviously a detective, and I don't want to spoil it for you guys since you haven't heard of this book before. But his special thing is that he's a symbiopath, and what that means is that he gets information from eating things. Like if he eats an orange, he will see like the person that harvested it, the kind of toxins they used on it to keep insects away, that kind of thing. And obviously, he can eat like a piece of bacon and get a very different reaction. So, you know, he's basically a vegetarian just for that reason alone.
So he can't help it.
Yeah, it just happens. And as you can imagine, if you were a detective like Tony Chu is in the story, and Chu is spelled C-H-U, he's a...
Yeah.
You know, the title's kind of a play on words, and the fact that he chews things and his last name is Chu. You know, he sometimes has to do things like eat evidence. Like you'd see on the cover, he's kind of contemplating eating that digit there, trying to solve the case. So it's kind of a gross out at the same time, but it's really interesting. I'd have to compare this to Monk as far as the weird kind of detective that we've seen.
Yeah.
And as far as readability goes, I put it up there with Why the Last Man. It's a fun, quick read. It's really enjoyable.
And so, Chew is by John Layman and Rob Gilroy, published by Image Comics. John Layman is actually writing Detective Comics for DC now. So I haven't checked out Chew or his Detective Comics stuff, but apparently he's a writer who's caught fire recently and is making his way up into the big two, cashing those big paychecks.
Yeah, I can see why. I mean, his stuff's just a joy to read, and the artwork complements it so well. It's a quirky, weird, enjoyable story. I mean, it's hard to really pin... As hard as it is to pin down the book, it's hard to pin down the story as well, because it's... spoilers. The backdrop is that a large outbreak of avian flu has occurred, and because of that, all kinds of poultry are outlawed, and so chicken becomes like a black market item, like, you know, drugs or something.
Oh, wow.
So it's his job to try and bust people that are chicken dealers. As weird as that sounds.
Awesome.
And so what he does is he runs around busting chicken dealers, and he has a brother actually that works on a Food Network type channel, and he's trying to like sell this like chicken alternative that's like artificial, and he like has this meltdown on TV that he just rants and raves and he screams about how like the avian flu was like invented by the government to as some kind of like method to control people. And one of the people that he works with, Savoy, who's one of the best supporting characters I've seen in a long time, also believes that the avian flu outbreak was caused by the government, and what he's trying to do is discover what's going on. And Chu doesn't really believe that himself.
This is kind of timely.
Yeah. It's I don't know. It's one of the. I think part of the reason it's become a bestseller is that it's so easy to pick up. Mm-hmm. There's no history with the character, obviously.
Yeah.
This is the first
time.
We're
talking about Image. Right
yeah.
Now, yeah.
You know, and he's not like Superman or Batman where he has like, you know, decades of backstory.
Yeah.
He's fresh. The story obviously has a lot to do with what's going on right now in the world. It's just a fun, quick read. And I
Do you think this could translate to TV the way Walking Dead did for Image?
It's a possibility. I'm not sure if it could, though, honestly. just because I know they tried to do one with Why the Last Man. I'd say this is closer to Why the Last Man, the kind of format. It's a kind of an oddball, quirky story, but it's got a lot of implications in the real world as well. It's kind of a quirky, odd character, I forget the guy's name when it's in Y. It's been a while since I've read
York.
it. York.
Yeah.
York and Chew, I think, have a lot in common with that. And I know there are talks to make a show out of it, but I don't think it ever went anywhere. I think that kind of floundered.
Well, I don't know. The Chew series, I know, is still going. I think the issues are in the 30s now or so.
Right.
And there was actually a spin-off with a character called Agent Pollo, which, hearing that this plot is so chicken-centric,
that's pretty funny.
Agent Pollo is a funny name. I don't know anything about it. I haven't read it. I just know it's very, very popular from Image. Right behind stuff like Saga and The Walking Dead. It's one of their big series right now.
Yeah.
So
I was very pleased when I picked this up. And, it well deserves the Will Eisner Award it got. I'd recommend this to
it got an Eisner?
Yeah, it did.
For Best New Series or what? Oh, yeah, for Best New Series.
Yeah, so I recommend this to anybody
out,
that likes comics. I'm just going to leave it here so you can read it, Chris. You can tell me what you think.
Awesome. I'll have to provide some feedback on a future episode.
It's just cool books.
So what else? You have some stuff that aren't quite comics here. Want to talk about one of these two books you brought over?
Sure. Let's go ahead and do a Men's Adventure first, since I've read more. I've read this a couple times. The first thing that really drew me to this was the cover, obviously.
Yeah.
It's just a guy in a sea of snakes. And there's a boat in the distance, but it's pretty obvious he's not going to make it.
Yeah.
This is called Men's Adventure Magazines. It was published by Taschen, which I think was I think it's a European company. I think it's an American company. But basically what this is it is a compendium of men's adventure, men's stories, that were very common in post-war America. This was something that, people would pick up right next to, stuff like a Saturday Evening Post or something. This is like the blue-collar version of a Saturday Evening Post. And it's just, a bunch of very hyper-masculine stories.
I just saw a cover that said, Rage for Men, and a gorilla in the front.
Where, it's always stuff like, there's a lot of stuff about sex, there's a lot of stuff about violence. It really focuses on World War II. Heavily, because this was the great adventure these guys went on before they came back, and this is what they they could relate to. I actually have a couple men's magazines in my long box. I've got Hitler's Last Will and just other ridiculous stuff. And it was this is produced as real news, the National Enquiry, and of course the journalists that they had just made stuff off the top of their head and got accompanying artwork. And the artwork actually is outstanding. I think it's
bang up. A lot of pin-up girls
great
in this.
Just great stuff. If the artwork and if the titles of some of the stories, raped in the black wave of terror. How could you not just be curious about Arab belly dancers and prostitution? I was stalked by Sarawak's commie headhunters. Weasels ripped my flesh. There's just...
I like these 2-page spreads where they just take a piece of artwork and blow it up.
It's great stuff.
It's too small to be a coffee table book, but it is in that kind of coffee table book format. So
it is. And obviously a lot of this stuff is highly misogynistic, pretty racist stuff. Mm-hmm. Definitely a relic of the times. But how weird this stuff was I hear this tank's just jumping a bridge.
Male magazine. They make no bones about it.
It's just 4 men.
Man's book.
Shackled nudes of the Red's monster general. I could not make up these titles if I tried. To think that someone got paid to do something like this is just beyond me.
The art is fantastic, though. I love looking at this stuff.
Fantastic. And my only quibble is that the print, and it's talking about the actual magazines themselves and their history in American print, it's very small.
Oh, yeah.
It's really tiny.
That's what they should blow this up to coffee table size.
They really need to.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's a fun read. And there are a couple times I've gone back here and just looked at the covers because they're so much fun to look at. So I'd really recommend that to anybody that wants to pick up a really different kind of book to have.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and that's kind of a genre we don't have anymore. Like, what's the equivalent of a men's magazine nowadays?
Jeez.
I guess you read Wired or you read Sports Illustrated, but they don't have these kind of flights of fancy, because I think this is largely replaced by television. And
pretty much. I mean, this kind of hyper-masculine, I just got off the mill and I was in the war, now what do I do with my life kind of
Stag magazine.
You know, and they encompass every period. I mean, you've got pirates, you've got, cowboys and Indians, you've got, like, savages in the jungle, you've got, like, Nazis, you've got everything going on here. This is not something you see anymore, really. This is a relic of the times, and it's a fun read. I didn't know much about them before I picked this up. I actually picked up those two men's magazines first, and I picked them up at Collector's Planet. You just had them lying in a dollar bin. I was like, what are these? You know, like I knew about magazines in the 70s with like Conan and Vampirella and stuff. But I didn't know about those, and those predate those, and they're even more racy and crazy than.
So, are there any fun facts you've gleaned from reading this that you stood out to you and want to share, maybe?
Sure. I was surprised at just how beautiful and detailed the artwork is for something as hackneyed as the stories are, you know. And often the stories, when I try to read the ones I have, they have a lot of misspellings, like a lot of paragraphs, like repeat themselves, like later. The writing's awful, but the art like speaks for itself, obviously. And I'd really like to see something like this again. Maybe not so offensive, but some kind of format like this. It's kind of cool, isn't it? Like
it is.
Like this is like.
But see, I think nowadays it could only come back in like an ironic fashion.
Yeah.
You know, like
never again could it be this kind of. You know, like. You know what I mean? It just wouldn't work anymore. Also, obviously, as you can tell from the titles, there wasn't really any one publishing house that stood out. They're all kind of scrambling for ground amongst all these other titles.
Bunch of nudniks in their basement. Yeah. These things.
Actually, I guess the closest analogy that slapped is me closing the book. You probably heard that. That was loud. It would be the printing house that Rorschach goes to with his journal.
New Frontiersman.
Yeah. That's like probably the closest analogy to that kind of work that we've seen.
That's actually what I thought of. It's funny because recently I've been rereading The Watchmen, and I'm revisiting this comic for the first time in, I don't know, a couple of years, ever since the movie came out. And I'm finding The Watchmen, if you come back every couple of years, you'll find something new. It really is a great comic book. I think around the time when the movie came out, I think I was a little burnt out on it. But
I had that same problem with Lovecraft when he started to get really popular. Like, you know, because I liked him first before you. Well, see, I'm already doing it. I'm already saying I liked him first. You know, like you knew bands, you know anything. I actually had that happen to me when 300 came out as the film because I read the comic earlier. I was in Walden Books one day, and these couple of young guys next to me were just cruising the aisles or whatever, and they picked up a copy of the more, you know, the recent run of 300 comic, and they're like, oh, they made a comic based off the movie. And I just want. Didn't. You know, I want to really lay into for something so minor as that, and I felt really stupid later. You know, but it's that kind of feeling. But yeah, Watchmen really sits in its own category.
Watchmen has aged extremely well.
Yeah,
like it's. I think just the fact that they set it in that parallel timeline, and you have. I'm sorry we're on a Watchmen tangent. No, Watchmen deserves its own episode, but we'll just go there for a minute. But I think because Watchmen is set in its own kind of parallel history, or alternate history, if you will, of the United States, if superheroes had actually been involved in things like the Manhattan Projects or the Vietnam War, it ages well because nothing looks dated in there. It's like, well, this is what 1986 could have been like if there had actually been superheroes throughout World War II and Vietnam. I don't know.
That's so weird that doesn't feel dated, but most actual stuff from the 80s feels horribly dated now.
Yeah.
But it has aged well. I actually kind of like the movie, honestly. I didn't think it was too bad.
Yeah. I think there are things... Watchmen, while while it reflects a lot of the attitudes in the 80s and a lot of things that were going on in the real world, Watchmen is also kind of a comic about comics. It's kind of a prophetic in that, the DNA of Watchmen is in every modern comic book, and comic books today are like these wild, violent, over-sexualized, like inbred grandchildren of Watchmen.
They're closer to men's adventure books than comics.
They are, yeah. Yeah, you said you were yearning for men's adventure. I think just read anything from the big two right now.
Maybe that's what I have to do.
Yeah, just pick up an issue of Justice League or anything, yeah.
You some dude punching a bear in the car.
Yeah.
Alright, running down the list, I picked up...
So one more time, what was the book we were talking about again?
Sorry about that. That was Men's Adventure Magazines, is what the book's called, and it's by Taschen, is the publishing house, and the author isn't listed on the cover.
I guess it's just a compilation of a bunch of different authors.
The Rich Oberg Collection, text by Matt Allen Collins and George Hagenauer, I think I'm saying that name right.
Oh, okay, Max Allen Collins is a novelist who's also he wrote some Batman comics, so he knows his way around
the weird thing
French
about this
pop
book
culture.
is that, they produce it, the text in English, and then later German and French. So I think this is some kind of, like...
international release. That's interesting, really?
I'm just like...
Holy shit! What am I even looking at?
I know,
There's a man
right?
with a chain surfing.
And there's like a lady balancing on like another dude's like shoulders, and he's holding a pipe when he's surfing, and he's got like a Nazi helmet, and a little swastika briefs. I mean,
words fail me.
I think it's a Hell's Angel having a days at the beach, but I'm not sure. Anyway, you want something weird for your coffee table, something that'll make your friends talk? Mm-hmm. Pick it up. I mean, I can't. This is an interesting book to have.
Or just if you like the art of Frank Frazetta or, the old Conan artists. Like.
Speaking of, I have to talk about Savage Sword at some point. Yeah, I've got it with me.
Oh, you have that Dark Horse black and white reprint.
Yeah, well, I'll talk about that in a second. I'll get the war stories first, and I'll pause and pick it back up. So this is something I picked up at half price.
Half price books, that is.
Yeah, that is half price books. And this is just kind of a compendium of war stories. As far as their earliest incarnation in American comics, there's some European comics in here as well, leading all the way up to post 9/11 stuff. And it's done by Mike Conroy, and there's an intro done by Garth Ennis. You guys probably know
damn fine war comics himself. Tales of the Rifle Brigade. It's a great
comic. Really, I've never read a lot of war stories. A couple that stick out to me. Did you ever read? I think it was a Batman issue, but it wasn't like in the actual canon. It was like underneath the My Greatest Adventure imprint, where like Batman's flying a biplane, like he's fighting like a German guy on a biplane.
No, I don't know. That sounds awesome. I've read the John Byrne. It's like where Batman meets Captain America.
Okay.
But
nothing
this
like
sounds like
I might have to look.
It sounds a little classier than that.
I might have to look for it, look it up. Like Batman isn't fighting World War I in it. That's just the cover art. But he's trying to solve this mystery that occurred in World War I later.
Ooh, that's kind of like the old. There's an old issue of The Brave and the Bold where Batman teams up with Sergeant Rock, but he doesn't really.
Right.
Because Brave and the Bold was their team up book. So.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'll have to see if I can dig that out of either my long box or it might still be in my my other place. I'll see if I can't find it for you. It's a cool story. I really liked it. That was the first war comic I read, and I think the other one I read about the same time was I'd occasionally snag issues of Haunted Tank or something like that, or Sergeant Rock, but very occasionally.
I used to love the Blackhawks, Sea Devils, Enemy Ace. Like those are great, and they do make black and white reprints of a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
DC Showcase.
Hans von Hammer. Yeah, I have his War in Heaven, like the two-parter, where his TPB, where he's like.
Is that a Howard Chaykin one? Or am I thinking of? No, Howard Chaykin did a Blackhawks.
Right.
My bad.
But that's like the one where he fights in the Luftwaffe in World War II. It's a good story, and I don't think we get enough of those kinds of stories about the German experience in World War II, or the Japanese even. it's easy to demonize them.
Yeah.
But it's Hans von Hammer was actually the first time I think that comics were done from a German perspective, where it wasn't a mustache twirling, hiling villain kind of guy.
I hadn't really thought about Enemy Ace that way. So in this War Stories of Graphic History, do they touch on Vietnam era comics?
Actually, they run the gamut. Everything from pirates. They mention 300.
Oh, cool.
They mention the Crusades, medieval period, and they thoroughly involve themselves with American struggles from the Revolutionary War onward.
I just saw Herbie the Fat Fury shaking hands with George Washington.
Oh yeah, that happens a lot.
Herbie got around.
Herbie was a popular guy. And this is all pre-code stuff, obviously, as far as couldn't have a story like this in the code,
Too interesting.
And EC Comics actually played a large part in this as well. They had an imprint called Two-Fisted Tales, which is probably one of the more realistic depictions of war at the time, because a lot of the stuff like Give Me Liberty or Star Spangled Comics, that's a DC imprint.
Yeah, like my experience with war comics is like the Joe Kubert, Kanigher stuff,
right?
Like Our Army at War and Sergeant Rock. And
there's a Two-Fisted Tales cover.
Oh, obviously Civil War, neat.
Yeah, and that's EC. That's before the code got implemented and shook them out of business. Actually, that's an illustration of Red Band of Courage done by a guy that worked also for EC. You can see the translation.
That's really cool.
Yeah, that's a beautiful illustration.
We can come back to this book or this topic for an entire episode.
Definitely.
I mean,
it really deserves
rife with stuff to talk about.
There's like some political cartoons. I mean, everything. It touches on everything. There's some Hans von Hammer stuff.
Yeah.
I think there's some Joe Kubert artwork actually right there.
That Army at War.
Yeah.
Might be. I don't know. The real, unless you can spot a signature in the art. With some of these older comics, it's hard to find the credits. Yeah. Of
course, the propaganda explosion in the 40s. Yeah.
Yeah.
Trying to
Young Allies.
Japanese.
All right.
Yeah. There they are.
Pep comics.
That's really the the beginning of Captain America. All those guys, they got their start here.
Mm-hmm.
Very
timely golden. Oh, I just saw one of my favorite kind of obscure DC heroes.
Take a look at it.
Mademoiselle Marie.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if this is in continuity anymore, but I think Alfred Pennyworth of Batman Sporting Cast had a fling with her when he was a young man. But obviously, time has moved forward, and Alfred can't possibly be that old anymore and still be serving Batman.
Exactly.
So that's probably a pre-Flashpoint or maybe even pre-Crisis thing.
Yeah, there's some Garth Ennis stuff. They actually have this comic, Screaming Eagles. I think it's in my long box.
Oh,
it's a one-shot. It's just about these guys that kind of hang out at a German chateau for a couple days and take a break from the war, and they swap stories and talk about their buddies that weren't so fortunate. But yeah, this basically covers everything. It's a good primer if you're interested in these kind of comics. G.I. Joe. There's some Vietnam stuff here.
The Reagan era war comics, I guess.
Vietnam Journal.
Yeah, there's
the Nom.
The Nom from Marvel. Larry Hama worked on that, and he would go on to work on G.I. Joe and other stuff. And I don't know, as a veteran and as a I don't want to get his nationality or ethnicity wrong, but he had a very unique voice in war comics. I think
so too. Yeah. Even stuff that's not obviously about people fighting, like Pride of Baghdad.
I have that too. That's Brian K. Vaughan and Nico Heidenreich.
Yeah, it's a great book. So just about everything. You can think of that's related to war. Is given kind of a once-over. Mm-hmm. So if you like it, obviously it gives you titles you can look out for. And there's a cover gallery in the back. Some really well-done covers.
3D action.
I remember when all 3D comics were like that. They're all popping out at you or whatever, trying to punch you or throwing water.
Well, if you're going to have 3D, what's the point of doing anything but that?
But yeah, that's, these all basically went away by the time the comics code were implemented. There was a couple that survived, like Yanks in Battle. Mm-hmm. That made it. But largely the EC stuff, the stuff that actually showed that war was not a picnic, was not well received by anybody. So
the propaganda type stuff was looked upon.
There's even some artsy stuff like White Death. Kind of not quite Americanized, very somber comics. But this is obviously conflict's been a big part of human life ever since we've been around.
Yeah.
This is a good example of showing how comics react to that.
Yeah.
So this is a cool book to pick up. That's War Stories: A Graphic History, and it's by Mike Conroy.
It's good stuff. So we've got one more trade here.
Yeah. Do you want me to go grab the Conan one from Living Room?
Yeah, go grab the Conan.
All right. I'll see one.
We're going to take a brief break and hear a word from our sponsor.
Boo-doo-doo.
Okay, and we're back.
Yeah.
So what's our next book?
I'm holding a very hefty volume called The Savage Sword of Conan, and it's I guess it's like a DC Presents or Marvel Essentials kind of book, but it's
big
done by
black and white phone book size reprint.
Done by Dark Horse, and this is the first volume. Not like it really matters because all Conan stories are pretty much the same.
Yeah. But I mean, for your history buffs, for your true comic geeks, you want to have this stuff sequential.
I know I do. That's why I started here.
Comics are just a big acid trip for me. I know. I didn't start with Spider-Man #1, so it's all relative to me anyway. But
yeah, what can I help? I can't help it. I'm kind of a collector when it comes to these things,
So these were originally published by Marvel, I think.
Right.
The Roy Thomas, Barry Windsor Smith stuff.
Mm-hmm. That's correct. It wasn't done in a comic book format because obviously these stories would never pass code in the 70s. That's impossible. So what they did was they took a larger format, the magazine, and they went around the code and they put these stories in them. And they had Vampirella, Tomb of Dracula, Conan.
They even tried some of the Marvel superheroes. There was a Spectacular Spider-Man magazine, and there was a Hulk magazine as well. And there might be others, as just those two. I've personally actually seen some of them. They're pretty neat.
And I know that some characters that proved to be very popular later, like Blade, got their start in these magazines. So this is the starting point for a lot of ideas that could not be funneled through the constraints of the code during the 1970s. Conan's probably just as old of a series as John Carter of Mars or anything like that. I remember reading those as a kid, actually, too. The little trade dime store paperbacks. The covers really catch your eye, and it's easy enough to read. With all the sexy bits, probably not really appropriate for a kid.
I have one collection of. It's not on this shelf; it's on my other bookshelf. But it's the Gods of Mars and the Warlords of Mars. And it's a bunch of John Carter stuff. It's really great stuff. Like when you can read it as a kid, it's very easy to get into. When you read it as an adult, you get equal enjoyment. And there's serious literary craft at work too. Like it's a little purple. It's got a little purple prose, but
Conan suffers from that sometimes as well.
But you can get into it. It's fun.
Yeah. First of all, even if you don't take the story into consideration, the artwork in this book is simply outstanding. I mean, this is some of these people's finest work.
We're talking about Barry Windsor Smith.
I mean, yeah. Neil Adams did work on the covers for these stories.
Which I think at this point he's just Barry Smith.
Right.
He added the Windsor later. I don't know. I have to look at the credits on the issues.
Okay, let's take a look at. Yeah, there's Barry Windsor Smith right there. Yeah. The original first 5 tales are Savage Tales of Conan the Barbarian, which is a magazine imprint that ran before the Conan the Barbarian stuff later.
And then we get Savage Sword of Conan. Is that the...
Right, Savage Sword was really when it started to take off into itself. Savage Tales folded into Savage Sword.
So is Savage Sword still in the magazine format? Because
yes,
at some point they went back into the pamphlet, the regular comic size.
Right, this is still the magazine size. John Buscema, just
legends.
Tim Conrad. Really, all this stuff is like Frank Vizetta, Boris Vallejo style stuff. Stuff that I really liked is, this artwork. I hope I'm not stretching hyperbole. This is probably what got me into D&D in the first place. I mean, how could you not want to be this awesome-looking dude? Like, there's this bones. He's got a sword.
And the chicks.
Yeah.
To a young, hot-blooded male. they knew how to draw you in immediately.
Immediately. Like,
Rosetta girls.
Every time I was a fighter in D&D, this is what my character looked like,
You're like, I'm running around in Speedo. I am Triple H.
My biceps and biceps.
Yeah.
And it's funny because, these are adapted by the original stories by Robert Howard, who was really a meek kind of guy, really shy, was really hesitant around people, and so I guess from his imagination, he drew what he wanted to be, this kind of hyper-masculine dude that just, killed everything, and, all the ladies loved him.
We talked about that with the creators of Superman a little bit.
Exactly. This is kind of, his imagination coming to life and kicking ass all over the place. And a lot of ass is kicked, let me tell you. The only problem with this kind of series is that, obviously the story is very formulaic.
Yeah.
Conan meets Hot Chick. Hot Chick initially rebuffs Conan as being kind of a douchebag. Like a tribe of them attacks him, or like they fight a monster or something. Hot Chick and Conan slay the monster. Sometimes there's another Hot Chick that's vying for Conan's affections, but he sometimes falls in with it, sometimes not. So anyway, at the end of the story, Conan and Hot Chick boink, and then he moves on to his next adventure.
They're finally going to do the ultimate Conan story where all of his bastard kids come after him. It'll be Conan versus the 1,000 bastards.
The 1,000 bastards. The 1,000 sons who were not.
So, is, at least as far as what's collected in this volume, is this all adaptations of Robert Howard's Conan stories, or do they venture into their own stories? Because eventually, the Conan stuff, it develops its own canon within the comic book.
Exactly. This is all stuff that Robert Howard did initially.
Okay.
And they haven't run out of material yet. I don't think it's not until the second or third volume of this series that they start to make their own stuff.
And this doesn't have much to do with the content, but I have to say, for this, while this is like an essential type volume, it is printed on a little better stock than the DC showcases or the Marvel essentials. What's the price point?
This was let me see here. This is $18 before tax.
Okay, so it's not that much more than an essential.
For 544 pages of classic stuff, you can't ask for a better deal than that. And what really strikes me is, I always said it before a few minutes ago, this artwork is just so friggin' beautiful for somebody to make this themselves by hand and just shade and pencil it in.
Yeah.
Because they weren't originally colored; they were black and whites. And it's cool stuff. It's easy to see how a series of youngsters growing up in this era could pick up a couple issues of this and then immediately go to the D&D basic set.
Yeah.
And as I have time, I'm going to read this slowly because obviously you get really tired of reading basically the same adventure.
Yeah.
But in time, when I finish this, I plan to pick up a second one. Just, they're fun to have.
Can't blame you. So Dark Horse is reprinting these? I wonder how they wrangle that away from Marvel. I guess that has something to do with the Conan estate, or
they probably just ran out of their hold on it. I mean, they
didn't renew that.
1974 was when they started. So Dark Horse is always looking for stuff like this to pick up because I know in the 90s,
Dark Horse, there's actually a current Conan series written by Brian Wood, drawn by Becky Cloonan, and so Conan is still a thing in comics.
Right.
Like they still. And I don't know if that's just to preserve the copyright. They need to have something in print or whatever.
I'm not sure. Because I know I know what imprint you're talking about.
Yeah.
And the only reason I didn't pick that up rather than this was because this was the same price for a lot more comic.
3 or 4 times as much, at least.
I mean, I like Vaughn, but for value alone, you can't go wrong with this, man.
Yeah. And some classic stuff. You want to have this on your shelf,
Yeah.
When you look at old comics like this, it's kind of a palate cleanser. It is. It's like eating a salad, after you've had McDonald's all week. It makes you feel good.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I know if you watched Thundar the Barbarian or that kind of stuff as a kid. But
Herculoid.
That's
a little more far out. But
yeah, you know what I mean. That's stuff I watched when I was a kid. That's what made me like this later.
This archetype, even, I mean, where do you stand on the Conan movies? We didn't
even
mention.
Honestly, they're fun to watch. I mean, let's be serious here for a second. Real talk.
Yeah.
Conan is not fucking astrophysics.
Not Arnie.
You know, it's not Chew. It's not Why the Last Man.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like food for thought. This is just balls out.
It's all atmosphere.
Swords and monsters and titties in all directions.
I just think for the man on the street, when they think of Conan, they're going to think of Arnold. They're going to think of the Conan movies. So I was just curious.
I liked them.
What you thought of the
movies. Did you see the last one? The most recent one.
The only one. Oh, you mean the current, like the reboot or whatever?
The last Conan movie.
I did not see it. No, the very first Conan is the one I really have any fond memories of because, you know, it's funny. I'm going a little tangent. I was watching that movie with my grandma and my aunt and my mom once.
That's cool.
And I just remember my grandma, this little old lady, was kind of lusting after Arnold Schwarzenegger while the movie was playing, saying, you know, damn, that boy looks good. And we all looked at her and were like, Grandma! so always, Conan will always have a place in my heart because of that memory when I was little.
I know what you mean. When I was younger, I used to watch a lot of films with my dad. I think Conan the Barbarian, the first one, was one of the ones we watched as well. And I remember there was a kid. I was kind of a fat, awkward kind of kid, and I saw this very muscled up figure for the first time in my life. I was like, you know what? I want to be more like him and less like fat, awkward me. It's something that, you know, I think anybody can pick up. It's so imbued in our history because, you know, Conan's, I don't think it's ever going to really go away anytime soon. No.
Like I said, Dark Horse keeps trying to make it work, and I think Conan is a property like Star Wars or Star Trek or even more contemporary like Buffy, that it will always have a life in comic books because there's a lot of crossover. You know, Buffy fans, comic book fans, a lot of crossover. Same with Star Wars, all that shit I just mentioned. Conan's not going anywhere.
Definitely not.
You ever heard of like Killraven? Or any of that kind of stuff? Marvel.
Actually, I haven't. Go ahead and enlighten me.
Marvel had a series called Killraven for a while, and I know it was part of an anthology. Originally, it wasn't called Killraven. It was part of like Amazing Fantasy or something like that. I could be way off. But Killraven is basically Conan, but he's in a post-apocalyptic environment fighting Martians.
Okay.
And it's just Conan, but with a little more, I guess, sci-fi flavor.
It's like a laser pistol, basically, instead of like a sword.
I'm trying to remember if he has a gun or not.
Okay.
Damn. But no, I was actually in the world of comic books. I was exposed to Killraven before Conan.
Really?
So I've always felt like Conan was a rip-off of Killraven, even though it's kind of the other way around. But
actually, funny story. The reason I came by this volume is that I don't know if you're familiar with Austin Eateries or not, but there's a place called Conan's, where it's decked out like one of these sword and sandals type places. And like there's a lot of Frank Vizetta, Boris Vallejo stuff on the walls.
Yeah, it's not quite like medieval times, though.
No,
right?
no. You know. It's not that cartoony.
Yeah.
But it's definitely, it's dark intentionally, and like all the lamps, like those hanging lamps in the 70s that look kind of like they're candlelit. So it's very atmospheric. And, you know, we ate there. They make really good pizza. I wasn't really thinking about that. And then later we went to Austin Books and Comics. I saw this. And I was like, you know, I've been kind of on the fence about buying this for a while. Why not? You know? So I ate at Conan's and ended up getting Conan's later at ABC.
And I always feel if you're going to splurge on comics, not to diss like the current output or anything, but you know, if you got, you know, $20 or $30 burning a hole in your pocket, you're like, I want to get some comics. I always say it's better to go with something like this than to go and pick up a stack of new books because you know what you're getting.
Yeah.
You know,
better the devil you know.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, not to drag the conversation away from Conan, but when I picked up this and Chew and a couple other books, and it was $50 by the time I got done after tax. You know, that's like the most I've spent in comics in maybe a year.
Yeah, I imagine for you had to take a crowbar to that wallet of yours.
But yeah, I mean, if you like D&D, you like Game of Thrones, you like fucking anything masculine, pick it up. You won't regret it.
If you just like hot chicks and great artwork.
And swords. You can't go wrong, man. You really can't. Good stuff.
Highest possible recommendation. So we got one more book on the stack here.
All right.
I consider this a modern classic. It's by two great collaborators working for DC here. JLA Earth 2 by Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely. And you read this just recently, or is your first time reading it, right?
Right, it is actually. I just picked it up. Actually, it's Matt's.
This looks like a new edition because it's got the new DC logo.
Right, it's got the peel back.
Yeah, because mine has I've got a copy on the shelf somewhere, and it's got the old DC bullet. So I'm glad to see this is still in print. Like, it's a fantastic story.
Yeah, you called it a great team. I consider it the DC team. This is it, you know?
Yeah, Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely should do everything for DC.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They are the brave and the bold of the editing of the editing hub. Yeah, this is just a cool story. Initially, when Matt gave it to me, I was like, "Is this going to be like Crisis on Two Earths?" Because I thought, okay, Owlman, Batman, everyone's on the cover.
It is like that, but it's way better.
It's better. and you were telling me earlier that they're planning on doing the story as Crisis on Two Earths, if they didn't, right?
Sure. This story, JLA Earth 2, it's about the Justice League meeting their Earth 2 counterparts, the Crime Syndicate. And for fans of older DC, pre-Crisis DC, this doesn't jive because this isn't what Earth 2 was pre-Crisis. But go with it. This is Grant Morrison, kind of working in a vacuum here. The Justice League meet their counterparts on Earth 2, the Crime Syndicate, and they go to a world where justice doesn't prevail, good doesn't prevail. They go to a world where evil wins. And when Justice League Unlimited, the animated series, was coming out, or I think it was still Justice League at the time, they hadn't added the Unlimited, they were going to adapt this into an episode, and it didn't pan out for whatever reason, so Bruce Timm and company decided to go with the whole Justice Lords story instead. But later on, as you know, available now at Best Buy or Amazon or what the fuck ever, there's your Justice League Crisis on Two Earths direct-to-DVD animated feature. And to say it's a loose adaptation of this isn't even correct. It's a Crime Syndicate story with the Justice League, but it's nowhere near the depth or just the level of interesting content that is in this comic.
Yeah, this has layers. I mean, the animated thing was just fun to watch. You could pop it in, not really pay attention to it, still get the whole story.
That's fun. And you get that great James Woods as Owlman performance.
That's pretty cool.
Which I thought was cool.
Yeah.
But let's not dwell on that. Let's talk about this comic.
Sure.
So, what did you like about it? It's fresh in your mind. I haven't read it in quite a while, but there are parts of this that are still stuck in my craw, so to speak.
I've always taken, I guess, kind of a really heavily subjective outlook on most of my life. I don't think there are very many objective truths out there. I think a lot of it is a matter of perspective as far as what you're looking at. And that's kind of what the main bulk of the book is about,
So you are not like Rorschach or The Question.
No. As much as I like those characters, I'm not like them at all. Yeah. I'd probably hate them if I met them. So it's a good thing I don't have to meet them.
I would never want to meet them.
No, but, they're scary individuals.
But sure, objectivism. I guess it comes up. It's an overarching.
Yeah, kind of. That's what I took from it, and I was admittedly reading it kind of fast because I was like, I want to get this in, and it was while you guys were playing NBC 2. So, really? So I was kind of just going through a little fast. Okay. But, I got the
whole gist of it. Seriously recently.
But, obviously, I don't think the Crime Syndicate, despite their name being the Crime Syndicate, I don't think they necessarily think what they're doing is wrong, just kind of a different way to do things, because anything that they do that is good on their version of Earth turns out bad anyway.
Well, one little example is there's a scene in here where Kyle Rayner is Green Lantern at the time. This is before Jeff Johns and Rebirth and Hal Jordan came back. The Kyle Rayner Green Lantern, while the Justice League is kind of undercover on Earth 2, they see a guy kicking a dog, and Green Lantern kind of stands up for the dog and says, hey, you guys are assholes, you're going to stop that. Well, if you notice, it's a little bit Quitely puts into the art, the dog runs off and gets hit by a car anyway, reinforcing this idea that on Earth 2, the worst possible things happen. The bad guys win.
All the time. Like even, I think, Yeah, here's the scene right there with that unfortunate dog.
Yeah, there's the dog.
Yep.
I don't think you see him get hit by that.
No, it's just implied.
Yeah.
Well, there's a little splatter in
okay, yeah. Okay, you totally see the dog get hit by a bus.
You get the after effect at least. But, yeah, I mean, Earth 2 just seems like a shitty place to live. And, Luther, I really thought that Luther was going to be like some kind of reverse bad guy in the story, but he isn't at all.
And it's creepy, the Lex Luthor of Earth 2 comes to Earth 1, and he's a nice guy, and it's weird. He's sort of he steals the identity of our Lex Luthor, and
yeah, he kind of just
Gosh, I'm fumbling over my words. There's so much I want to say, but I'm just gonna.
Obviously,
I'm joking on it.
Obviously, he can't help looking like him.
Yeah.
But Lex on Earth 2 is totally different than Lex on normal superhero. I guess it's Earth 1 in this continuity, but not anymore.
Yeah,
because of the restart. Man, that makes my head hurt.
Yeah, if you just read this as what it is, just a one-shot, and don't worry about continuity or where it fits into the grand scheme of DC's chronology. It's just a great story about the Justice League meeting their counterparts.
Exactly. Like tiny stuff like now showing the 3 Racketeers.
Yeah.
Musketeers. But I guess if anything else, you should just take away from this book that hell's paved with good intentions.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, despite the best attempts of the Justice League to help out this world, it goes to shit anyway. But it's interesting to me that in the final scene, Brainiac threatening both worlds at the same time.
Yeah.
They have to rely on their, I'm using finger quotes, evil counterparts to kill him because they can't do it because, it's against the code or whatever. So, evil is kind of necessary. Or at least, whatever you think of as being evil is necessary so that good can also exist because it can't define itself by itself.
It's like a warped version of every Grant Morrison JLA story has that, that touchdown pass.
Yeah.
And it's like a warped version of the JLA touchdown pass where you see Ultraman, I believe it's Ultraman, right, who delivers the final blow and
he
kills
just
Brainiac.
Melts in with his laser vision.
And,
yeah, like Batman says, the only way to defeat Brainiac was to lose, because they couldn't do it, obviously. But,
I also found it interesting that I think it's Aquaman and Martian Manhunter don't have counterparts on Earth 2.
Yeah.
So when the crime syndicate attacks Earth 1, they sort of hold the line, and you get to see some, I guess out of the big 7, the 2 who aren't the most major heroes, you get to see a little badassery from them. And that's always fun.
It is.
On a purely cathartic level.
This is, Aquaman when he slept the hook.
Yeah. This is the King Arthur. Aquaman. Yeah.
But yeah. It's a fun read. I really enjoyed it. I wish I had read it, a second time or, again. So I kind of just pick things up.
It's one you can read over and over again. Yeah. Anything with Quietly. Because he's such a master of visual storytelling, and just putting each page is almost like a Where's Waldo. There's plenty of stuff to pick apart. And
you could look at his stuff for minutes at a time, at one panel.
And this is the team that brought us All-Star Superman. So.
Definitely.
We're lucky I'm not balling right now.
As a grown-ass man, I can cry to read this book. So, have you often followed JLA kind of imprints? Because it's an off and on thing for me. Like, I don't usually follow it.
Just the Justice League in general, since Grant Morrison started his run in, I want to say 96 or 97.
Yeah.
I followed the Justice League's adventures in comic books pretty much on through now. I missed a few issues or maybe an arc here or there, but I like the concept of the Justice League because, for one, it reminds me of, Super Friends or whatever. It's just, for a frugal guy like yourself, you have to appreciate the fact that you get all the heroes in one book.
I do.
In one story. Instead of going out and buying Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, just get Justice League and get them all. But also, I like the idea that and I think Grant Morrison's the one who really kind of introduced this. I could be wrong. Maybe this is kind of a Silver Age concept, but the Justice League and their Watchtower, he's kind of taking like the the Arthurian legend or like the stories of Camelot and plugging that into the superhero world, and that
kind of the guardians that would watch over mankind, kind of a thing. Yeah, that's really something we could talk about in length later. If we ever talk about the myth of the hero, get around to talking about that kind of stuff. But yeah, I definitely see that. That's for sure. It's one minor quibble, but is it just me, or does it seem that Quietly always draws everyone that makes him look kind of old, like with all the lines, you know?
That's a common complaint about his art, is that he does weird faces, specifically like the lips, and like you said, he puts a lot of lines on the faces, which makes people look wrinkly at times. And I don't know, it's like in some panels it bugs you, but in others he can get so many expressions, because when he puts that many lines on a face, he establishes almost every muscle, you know?
Yeah, I mean, like here it works great, like it's accentuating what he's doing, but like over here it just looks, that's just really excessive, you know?
Yeah, but like you look at that guy and he's supposed to look old.
That's true.
But I know there are better examples, I know what you're saying, and his artwork does have its faults, but to me, I put storytelling above anything else. You know, if his characters are a little ugly or the lips look a little weird, that's fine. Just the fact that there's a real continuity from panel to panel, and everything just organically flows. Like when Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely do a comic together, it sings. You know, like it's like a Beatles song. It doesn't feel like it was made. It just feels like it just came together.
It just happened.
Yeah.
I definitely agree with it. It's like a Jack and Stan story, you know? Mm-hmm. It just, things just click and it happens. I mean, that's a very minor thing. It's just something I've always noticed whenever I read his stuff, is that he has the lines kind of a thing.
I gotta admit, when I was younger and I was first, when Morrison and Quitely got onto X-Men, I couldn't stand Quitely's art, but I did like the fact that, I don't know, I guess it was just because I grew up on all those 90s comics, that it was so far removed from the gritted teeth and the unrealistic poses and the action figure bodies and everything that like
I know what you mean.
Yeah. I used the term palette cleanser before, but like when I first got into this kind of art, like your Frank Quitely, your Chris Burnham, now I'm blanking on other names, but these guys who do a little more line work, and they don't put the characters in poses so much as characters are standing. Like just looking at the cover, that costume looks like it is being worn by Superman. Ultraman. He still has a ridiculous physique, but it looks like they're wearing those clothes.
Right.
You know, it doesn't look like an action figure with color painted over it.
You know, after not decades, but years of Rob Liefeld and people that are like, I'm going to draw like him. Yeah. It's nice to see something like that, you know?
And it's like, here's some food for thought. Like, Frank Miller, you know, he had his legendary run on Daredevil. And he always said, you know, when this is Frank Miller we're talking about, so his views are a little extreme. Keep in mind who we're talking about. But he always said, like, when superheroes and supervillains are fighting, they're basically naked. Like, if you look at their costumes, the costumes are tacked on. You know, the costumes are not being worn. You're seeing that character's physique just colored differently, and it's implied that he has a costume on. But basically, they're naked. And he always took it as, like, you know, when Daredevil and Elektra are fighting, like in Frank Miller's Daredevil, they're fucking. You know, that's the fanboy version of it, the adolescent version of it. When you're a little boy and sex is scary and far away, like that kind of violence between like superhero characters. It's phallic isn't the word. It's sexual.
Yeah, phallic's the word that Mr. Awesome would use.
Yeah,
we don't talk about him here.
No, I don't even like Missile Command.
Was never good in the game.
But I'm sorry if I'm rambling, but I just thought that Frank Miller kind of provided that insight.
It's interesting you said that, because if you look at all, like, I guess the most anatomically, probably fucked that word up, anatomically correct, realistic physiques that you'd see as far as sculpture would go, like the ancient world, the Greeks sculptures, they're always doing something. Like someone's throwing something, or action is either happened, is going to happen, or is in the middle of happening.
Yeah, there's a study of anatomy going on when you look at those.
I guess that's kind of like when Batman punches. That it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
It's either has happened, will happen, or is going to right now in that frame. And that's kind of everything's tensed up. I can kind of see that. Yeah.
That brings it back around to Kirby, because I think the reason Kirby and Quietly kind of have this a good comic book action panel isn't the moment of impact. It's right before or right after the impact where you get the most
momentum.
The most momentum, the most dynamic force.
Exactly. That makes a lot of sense. Man, we just hit Miller, Kirby, and then Ancient Sculptures in 30 seconds.
We're supposed to review these damn books. So anyway, JLA Earth 2 by Grant Morrison, Frank Whiteley. Weird faces and great anatomy.
Read it. If you like JLA,
great story.
Read it. If you don't like it, you'd probably like it anyway.
And if you're a fan of Grant Morrison's JLA run, while this was not a part of the regular series, it does kind of fit into his run on JLA. So you can look at it as a lost episode if you want.
Yeah. Well, I guess I just ran out of stuff, so I guess that concludes the episode.
Well, yeah. Shit, we talked for about an hour about a stack of great books. Once again, we talked about Men's Adventure magazines by Toshin Press.
Yep.
War Stories, A Graphic History by Mike Conroy. Savage Sword of Conan.
Number 1.
What do you call this? Volume 1?
Yeah.
The black and white reprints from Dark Horse. And JLA Earth 2 from DC by Morrison and Quietly.
As well as Chew by John Lehman.
Oh man, I skipped right by Chew because it wasn't on our stuff.
I was like,
we threw it into the ether or something. I didn't see it.
So yeah.
So Chew from Image, Volume 1. These are all good.
You got money to burn?
Yeah.
Got time to burn? Want to read a book? Pick one of these up. Tell us what you thought of them.
Yeah, exactly. And if you want to give us some thoughts on any of this stuff or anything at all, you can reach us at clubofheroes.gmail.com.
Yeah.
And we also have a blog where there's tasty content every couple of days.
Sometimes there's comments on there.
Yeah, I haven't seen any. clubofheroes.blogspot.com. Please like us on Facebook.
Yeah. Feel free to check us out and toss us a line. We'll see you next time.
Next time.
Stop button.
Wasn't it fun when we went sliding the other day? Yeah. We should get doing maybe tomorrow. Sarah, I have this book about dinosaurs. Nope. Which one is better? I asked Sarah first. We're going to look at this. No, we aren't. My book is better. It is not. Yes, it is. It is not. Yes, it is. No, it's not. Yes, it is. Stop it, Jason.
My book rack. Molly, what's going on here?
Nothing.
Sarah, Jason?
Nothing.
Well, something must be. There are books all over the floor. Let's get them picked up.
Molly knocked them off. It's her fault. It is not. Yes, it is.
Stop it. There's no more arguing. Molly, you help me pick these books up. Jason, I think you should put your coat on and go home. Sarah?
I have to go with Jason, Sam.
All right, Sarah, go ahead.